All right, Will, are you ready to record?
Yeah, we're recording.
All right, welcome everyone. I guess I call to order the subcommittee meeting. But I guess just a couple opening comments. So it's time to, put pen to paper and create recommendations. So it's like my most favorite time right now is this is where we kind of narrow them down. So we did the voting. We're going to have some discussion, and then really, where do we take with recommendations into the committee? So it's you get to make 90% of your changes when you're writing the recommendation versus somebody tweaking them or changing them a little bit, and then final inclusion. So I will defer the rest of the comments so that we can have more time for discussion on those, which is I think the most important part. But we'll knock out roll call. Willer, if you want to do it.
So for DEQ, we have Chair Alexander Sands.
Yep.
And Dave Davis is
He's not here.
from HR EDC, Ben Farland with me.
Thank you.
With me. Northern Virginia Regional Commission, North Belay, Rebecca Murphy. ICAR, Jessica Whitehead or Carol Constantine. Here. We have Jessica. UVA, Environmental Institute Program Manager, Karen McBattery, but I believe Joe Vogel is here representing. Vince, Molly Mitchell, she's online.
Here.
Grant, Chloe Hartley. Virginia Tech, Wendy Stout. Virginia Transportation Research Council, Michael Fitch. Wetland Watch, Mary Persisted or Ian Blair.
Here.
Ian's here. And that is all. So, we're going to.
Sure. The adoption of the agenda. Any issues with the agenda or any discussion on it? All right.
Great. I'm going to adopt.
Guess is there a second? All right. So we have a motion and a second to adopt. Any discussion issues? All right, we can adopt it. Now moving on to Q2 meeting minutes. Is there any motions? Or a motion to adopt? All right, Troy, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Any discussion? All right, good to go. Q2 meeting minutes are adopted.
And Jessica Murphy does from the Northern Virginia Regional Commission to join.
Okay.
I wanted to take this time to introduce one of our new staff members as well to the subcommittee members. We have Ellie Flisco here joining us today between Carolyn and Arthur. She is a graduate student at ECU, the ECU Wilder Fellow that is with us from now until working on helping us develop a strategy to provide services and capacity to under-resourced people. So excited to have her with us, and you will see her around our meetings and routes. Right. So before we get into the meeting content, just kind of an overview and bring us back to why we're here, what we're working on. Technical Advisory Committee is formed to help advise DCR on the development of Virginia Coastal Resilience Master Plan Phase 2. This planning document is meant to be a trusted resource to assist government entities, state agencies, PDCs, localities, in making more evidence-based decisions on how we address the flooding challenges that we face here in Virginia, not only today, but in the future, as well as identifying opportunities to prioritize some of our solutions, collect different projects and initiatives across the coastal region to understand what the needs are, what the actions are currently being, so we can better work together to address this. Coastal plan is for all 8 of the coastal PDCs. Coastal plan mainly in title, but also includes fluvial and riverine flooding. Major elements of this plan are those flood hazard exposure, where is it going to flood today and in the future from the rain, from the rivers, from storm surge in our tides. What can that flooding impact? And today and in the future, what are we doing? What are the financial needs, but also a key component in this plan document is also the subcommittee recommendations. We're here to talk about today. This plan document is scheduled to be released at the end of this calendar year. And then we are charged with developing this plan every 5 years. Our subcommittee here, the Research Data and Innovation Subcommittee, met about a year ago and defined what are the objectives for the subcommittee that we should focus. Those are informing development of the flood hazard exposure model, which we've done and appreciate your input, as well as the inputs to the flood hazard risk assessment. And we'll cover some of these a couple slides later. But the other objective of this subcommittee is to develop recommendations for future planning efforts. And what can we do moving forward within the lens of research, data, and innovation? What additional needs are there in that lens that we can be working on in this next 5-year period? Just an overview of where we've been, where we're at today, and where we're going with our schedule. This is our second to last subcommittee meeting. So this is our Q3 meeting of 2024. We have a brief update on the flood hazard assessment, but the majority of today's time will be focused on recommendations development, which we started a few subcommittee meetings before. We have one more subcommittee meeting after this, our Q4 meeting, which is in October, which we need to finalize up to 5 final recommendations that get voted out of subcommittee for our full TAC to vote on at our final TAC meeting. Any questions or comments on the plan, subcommittee objectives, or where we're at with the subcommittee? All right. Just wanted to briefly give you all an update of where we're at with the flood hazard impact assessment and really the flood hazard data we're using. We updated our approach to thinking about planning scenarios for this phase 2 effort because we have additional sources of flooding with our fluvial data and our fluvial data. Not all that data comes in the same time period, climate conditions. So we kind of reframed it instead of every 20 years on the coastal plan phase 1 using a single climate projection, sea level rise projection. We reframed it into 2 different planning horizons, our near future and a far future. And within each planning horizon, what risk tolerance are we planning for? So we have a moderate risk tolerance where we can accept some levels of uncertainty and risk, or do we have a lower risk tolerance where we don't have adaptive capacity or really can't tolerate those uncertainties for our structures, more aligned with kind of critical structures or regional impacts. So this is an overview of the data, the flood hazard data that we're using for the phase 2 effort. The coastal data from phase 1 is being reused and just thinking about it in a different way as far as the risk tolerance and timing. On the fluvial data, that was a big accomplishment this year, was all the fluvial modeling that we completed across all 8 coastal PDCs. Those fluvial models are then kind of crosswalked to 2 different planning horizons from the data that we have from Marissa. We've got a near term 2020 to 2070 and a longer term 2050 to 2100. We're using the RCP median value as well as the RCP 90th percentile to help us evaluate low risk options. And then on the fluvial side, we're using the FEMA data because that's our best available data. Any questions or concerns or thoughts on our data? So we've completed the impact assessment using this data. They're now really crunching numbers, working on telling the stories that this data has, and not just putting it out there, but what's most impactful for different regions, different stakeholders, and trying to have compelling stories to help motivate people to use these products and help look into the Web Explorer for some more details or ask for the data itself and use it for their own planning efforts. So we're excited to have this much more comprehensive picture of flooding in the coastal regions. All right, Today focused on recommendations. Last subcommittee meeting, we started putting some of the recommendations down on paper. Came up with over 30 all across the subcommittee. We came up with over 120 recommendations. Trying to narrow that down to 5 recommendations per subcommittee. We come out with a total of 20 recommendations in the plan document. You all received the survey. Thank you all for participating and doing the survey. I know it takes time, challenging, but do appreciate your input. That helped us reduce our list of 30 down to 10 top priorities. The top 10 subcommittee recommendations were based on highest ranking scoring. So you had the opportunity to say which 10 or 12 recommendations are in my top tier. And then we asked you to rank those 1 to 12. So you got ranked at 1, you got 12 points. We summed up everybody's scores. Now we have the top 10 that were sent to you earlier this week. Today we're working to try to get that down. Whether it's combining some very similar recommendations or prioritizing one of the top 5 that need to move forward. Other recommendations that don't move forward in this process aren't lost. The entire list of the raw subcommittee recommendations are going to be a part of the appendix to the plan document, but really want to focus on what are the high priority recommendations that we need to do to improve mitigation of severe repetitive flooding in Virginia. And that's what's going to be in the plan document itself. The recommendations should be something that we can try to work on over the next 1 to 4 years before the next planning cycle. It can be a process improvement for DCR in how we engage and work through the planning process, but can also be opportunities for others beyond our Office of Resilient Planning at DCR to make improvements to help move the ball forward in these interim years. After we hopefully are coming out with 5 subcommittee recommendations today, they'll be presented to the full TAC, and the full TAC will get an update of where we stand. At the next subcommittee meeting, we have the opportunity to refine the wording of those top 5. So today's focus is more on the concept of the recommendation. We can improve some of the language, but aren't trying to necessarily get final language out today. And then those final recommendations that get voted out here will be presented full TAC to vote on at our last. When thinking about prioritization and getting from 10 to 5, these are your recommendations, but we have some guidance of what we think to make higher priority recommendations. We think it should align with the purpose of the plan, as well as the purpose of this subject. Think of it in that lens. We also have alignment with the Coastal Resilient Master Plan principles, which are over here to the right. And then also consider the impact, urgency, and the feasibility of these recommendations over this 4-year period before the next. Some additional context. The state recently started our Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan. That's due at the end of next year. That is a plan for state agencies to come together and determine what is our strategy for addressing flooding at the state level. This Coastal Resilience Master Plan is meant to be more informative at the local and regional level as far as what our better data is or as the challenges. And we want to gather a lot more of the local. So there is another opportunity for higher state level recommendations to potentially come in our state planning. So there's another bite at the apple. I also added for additional context, the Commonwealth Research University Collaborative. We are the Research Data Innovation Subcommittee. A lot of these recommendations that we discussed, we had the for each one, try to identify a responsible party. It is just a draft responsible party that's part of the discussion today. But one of the responsible parties that I listed on these recommendations is the Commonwealth Research University Collaborative. That collaborative exists in code. I don't know that it exists operationally, but it's meant to say it kind of universities. And kind of see some potential for some form of collaborative or coordination across the universities of all the different that's going. We are trying to name individual actors in their responsible parties, with the exception of the Office of Resilience Planning. So even if it's DCR and another agency, that would just get brought into state agencies. We're not trying to call out one university or another. That is University Research Collaborative. If you want to change that to just universities, then we can rework that for you as well. I'm gonna hand it over to Linda from launch in a few minutes. Any high-level question, she's gonna provide additional details on what the process is for trying to get down. Any, all good to move on? All right, Linda, hand it over to you. And I will screen back.
We have two subcommittee members who were here at this morning subcommittee, another subcommittee member who is part of the process from a previous subcommittee. Some of you have done this already. We're going to think about, we're getting from 10 down to 5. We're really going to be thinking about not the exact wording, but the concepts behind each recommendation. And so within just a few minutes, when we break into different stations, the purpose during that time is to see if there are some recommendations that you think could fit together. And you, again, don't have to wordsmith it, we just have to identify like 3 and 4 or 3 and 10. They can move forward together. Next time, when we get together for Q4's meeting, that's when we're going to finalize what the wording is going to be. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we'll do in between time, because you'll have this given back to you, you can think about it. So for today, again, think about the recommendation when you come to it, and think about, is it something that is important to go forward? Is it something that is not as important, it's not as actionable, you don't need it to go forward? And then think about how you could combine it with another recommendation. When you do come to the stations, and online, we have CC and Sydney facilitating, and CC will be screen sharing for everyone who's online. You're going to see the responsible party listed underneath the recommendation itself. What we'd like you to do is take your marker if you're in person, and if you think the responsible party is okay, put a check mark by it. Each individual who has a marker, put a check mark. If you think you want to change that, go ahead and write in who the responsible party or party should be. And then you go down, and the next piece is about the recommendation description. And that's because these top 20 that go forward, recommendations from all the subcommittees, those top 20, we want to put more depth to them. So anything that you can put to bring this 1 or 2 sentence recommendation more to life, give it some detail, something like that, put that in the description section. Below that, there's a comment section. And if you'd like to, you can write directly on there. We find that works too, but we gave you sticky notes. So feel free to write any comments and sticky notes and stick them up on the recommendations itself. That could be things like, I don't think this one should be supported, or it really needs to have X, Y, and Z to make it worthwhile. Just comments that don't directly involve the language or the content of the recommendation. Online, the same thing. Cindy will be typing while Cece's helping with that conversation for those who are online. When we do this work, we've got 3 stations in the room, and online you'll just be moving through them in groups of 2. In the case of in the room, the station 1 and 2 each have 4 recommendations, and you'll notice station 3 has 2 recommendations. We cluster them that way because you might be able to combine some, and some might not be so related. It's just easier in a 30-minute period of time to get through 3 stations. So that's the basic sense of it. I'm not going to skip this very important part, which is we're gonna get creative. You need to be creative to be able to get to what you're wanting for the recommendations. So I'm going to do about a 1-minute creativity activity. You're going to align your right side of your brain with the left side of your brain, and the way you do that is by crossing part of your body to see your hands and your feet. I'll show you what to do. And also by doing this, we call it the butterfly hug or the gorilla hug. I'll give you both options. It actually helps reduce the cortisol production in your body, and it'll make you feel calmer. So if you have to stand in front of a group of 200 people, when you're off stage, you can do this first. So all you have to do is put your hands in front of yourself, thumbs out. You can take your right palm and cross it over your left palm, and then bring your hands together and link your thumbs. Now you're in the butterfly hug. So bring this to your chest, just your fingertips just below your shoulders, and you alternatively thump these wings. And it's actually working on the centers in your chest and it's calming you down. So if you do this for a while, you just breathe. I have to talk, I can't just breathe, but still you might notice a sense of more calm about you. And the crossover is what's important. So if we do this with the gorilla thumb, you do the same thing. You can make a fist, but make sure you cross your fist. And then you do your tummy. There you go. I've not asked any gorillas if this is why they've done, but. So, hoping that helps with creativity. Do you have any questions about how we're going to go about this? With recommendations. So after a 30-minute period of time, we'll come back together as one unified group, being in person as well as those who are virtual. And then I'll lead a discussion. We'll talk about these and see what we can get to get down to 5. If we don't have a general consensus about which 5 groupings or 5 individual ones to move forward, then at 2:30, at 2:30, we will do a voting. And those who are in person, I'll give dots to. Those who are online will be able to use chat. Just make sure if you are an online committee member that you can use the chat function. Feel free to test that right now if you'd like to just say hello or whatever you want in the chat. Make sure that works. Okay, and we do have a 5 extra minutes, which is great, because when it comes to the discussion, it's hard to do it all in a half an hour, so we'll take any minutes that we can for that discussion time.
Breakout room.
Oh, the breakout rooms. So for those who are here in person, you can choose to go to any station that you'd like. Since I think there's 7 of you, just try to disperse yourselves so that someone is, at least one person is at each station to start. But then you can move from the stations at your leisure. You don't have to stay in the same groups. There's going to be a facilitator at each one. So we will be able to have Arthur and Rebecca at station 2. Matt will be at one station and Carolyn at another station. And then that way your facilitators will help you to put things down on the papers and help with the discussion. For our online group, we're going to put you all in a single breakout room. And the reason to do that is just how the sound works. It's going to be quieter for you that way. So in just a moment, you will see a breakout room invite pop up on your screens. Just hit accept to that. So you will be transported through hyperspace and land in the breakout room. And then CC will start the discussions there. When it's time to come back, you'll be able to come back on that. Okay, let's get rolling.
All right.
Yeah. Being able to.
Yeah.
So, I'm a research and engagement program.
I didn't want to have that.
Yeah, so Fred is interim, I'm already. And I.
Is everyone back in the meeting room virtually?
We are here.
So we're coming together now to talk about each of these different recommendations. So we have just half an hour. And we're going to lead towards what are these general concepts that you are sure you want to move forward? Are there some that you can consider defining? If we get to 5 combinations of these 10, then we don't need to vote. Other than that, at half past, we're going to break into voting to see which ones go forward for wordsmithing to be the top priority for recommend. So let's start with number 1. What were your thoughts around number 1? Let's ask virtually. Any thoughts on that, CC? Molly, Rebecca?
Yeah, that was discussed as a high priority item, and I'll let Molly or Rebecca, would either of you like to speak to that?
Oh, yeah, I can hop off. So I believe it was number 1. You might have the numbers listed out.
1, 5, 7, and 9. Yes, we were looking at combining.
Right. So I think they all kind of had that research element, including partnership. So we reworked that one a little bit to be able to incorporate elements of them, each with some of the specific topics for research.
Yes, so we do have some draft language for a reworked recommendation, combining those, if you'd like that.
Rebecca can put that on the screen in a moment. So 1, 5, 7, and 9. For those who are in the room, what are your thoughts about combining any aspects of 1, 5, 7, and 9?
Well, when I was at station 2, 5, and 7, we talked about combining.
Okay. So let's take 5 and 7 then. Is there anyone opposed to combining 5 and 7? Or do anyone have thoughts that would be a reason why not to combine 5 and 7?
One of the thought, they might still be able to be combined, but it feels different to be looking at collaborative research between public and private entities for adaptive solutions. That's one area of particularly more innovation and commercialization areas, whereas there are also university involved in this too. That may or may not be, that could be independent. Doesn't have to be public-private for universities to do some of this work. So those are just 2 lanes. They might be 2 lanes of a overall single recommendation, but wouldn't want to lose both lanes by combining. That makes sense.
So, and that's true. Troy's point is really important for all of these. When you're combining, if you've got 2 concepts or 4 concepts, you want to make sure you're keeping the concepts that are important when you work. So 5, I'm going to write down 5 and 7 as potential to be combined. And go ahead and talk a little bit more about, you said 1 and 9 as well.
And we also said 1 and 7 too.
And you also had 1 and 7.
So we had 5 and 7, compare 1 and 7. But that might be carryover from the same.
So if we could look at 5, 7, and 1. Any thoughts about 5, 7 with 1? Again, you have to keep your concepts. Work with grouping. And if you have, Rebecca, do you have from CC what the combined language would be or no?
Yes, however, there's combinations with 1, 5, 7, and 9.
So I'm gonna just put that by language at the top there. And we'll see if 9 works as well in there.
So we had some discussion about whether what exactly multi-institutional meant, and number 9, whether that meant like across state agencies, or, I don't know, this is Whitney's comment, so I.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful to have more collaboration about different data sets that different, you know, BDM and MEDA and DPR are putting together, and either try to streamline them and build off of them, or at least have a good idea of why they don't always quite the same. I think that would be valuable. Like I said, I don't know what was really.
I think we should also,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think we should also note that in the virtual group, the question of what exactly do we mean by support came up on several of these. Are we talking administrative, financial? Do we need to clarify that?
Yeah, regarding number 9 for the online group, I think, you know, in the room, there were a lot of questions about both what was meant by support and also what was meant by multi-institutional. I had different conversations with each group about what each of those things meant. So did you all agree on what that meant, and could you explain that so we could understand better how it might fit together with that?
No, not necessarily. We didn't address it to that detail.
Yeah, it was a note that it needed to be clarified in the
Right.
final language.
Okay, but it sounds like in general, you grouped the conversation online, you group these together because they're related to research.
Right.
So it's never not related to research.
Did she ask us a question?
So number 9 is multi-institutional efforts, the supporting the word collaborative comes up there in some way. Collaborative efforts, multi-institutional efforts. And then and to collate, quantitate around the data. Around data on modeling, risk assessment, planning, decision. So collaboration component of number 9. And then data component of number 9. Can we combine 9 with 5, 7, and 1? What do you think?
Well, just to add another layer to make it just that much more fun. There's another angle on 9 that we ended up focusing less on multi-institute, or Carolyn and I did, I guess, actually. Our conversation looked at the question about it's not data for modeling risk assessment and planning, it was data on modeling risk assessment and planning. So that sounds like adaptive management, reflective practices of our planning process and tools, which then link that to core in our minds a bit too.
Yeah, so that's where my mind went when I was over there talking about 9. It's 9 and 4, it's very similar. It's like 9 is the quantitative and qualitative data piece of it, but it's really the why of why we're doing research, which is the why of number 4.
So combining the concepts of 9 and 4 together.
So I'm not opposed to that, but can you give an example of an action that we would do under a combined 9 and 4? What would we do?
So the multi-institutional efforts, I was thinking like, so like if DQ and VMRC had some ideas on, right, we want to improve this watershed, right? So DQ's got the TMDL piece of it, VMRC's got the permitting of the project that in tidal waters. So based on the data, we think we got to improve this watershed, and then the combination of VMRC and DQ's permitting, kind of the regulatory piece, that would be the gap. Is we got to get faster at doing that together based on the data piece of it. So if we're seeing resiliency issues in a certain watershed, in my mind, number number 4 is multi-agencies. Or what the gap is to kind of figure out where it is. Does that make sense or no? Not at all.
Another example I could think of would be the potential of case studies on a number of projects that have already gotten to point of implementation. At Chesterfield Heights, number of NIPWIF projects that have been implemented around the state. The Flood Protection Fund, Fairness Fund had invested stuff. So in a few years, we're going to get this suite of examples when we reflect on how did we do, how did the tools we're using for planning, modeling, risk assessments, process itself, lessons learned, it's working, it's not. So an adaptive management strategy for planning.
I think there would definitely need to be some edit on the wording, the wordsmithing of it to get to that point, but I think.
The 9 and 4.
What do you think, Whitney?
You're not told.
I am not told, but
You
I
think,
think it through.
you think they should be separate?
Well, I'm trying to think. Is this so the state can tell what counties how to do better? I mean, like, what do we, if you review projects that have been done, like the only way I think you'd see those challenges that you have to talk to, he's pretty close to it, right? And then, well, because we debated this morning, but is this like a plan for what state can do, or is it a plan for other people? Right.
Yeah, we discussed on number 4, it's obstacles at the local scale, but is it also obstacles at the state scale?
You see a different combination. Or.
Is it the local and the state question?
Okay, so number 4, like, yeah, I just think I would probably focus more on how the state could be more supportive of innovative things that don't meet current spec, regs, and things like that. So that would be my preference, but that's not what we're talking about. And I guess as far as trying to combine things, I kind of like the idea of pilot projects, which was more like combining, which one? Like number 2 or number 5, we were talking about, I thought, sort of doing projects and then monitoring them, or maybe monitoring existing things. But that, like, anyway, I'm mixing things up differently, and I was like, wow, no one already did 4 together, and I don't know how to.
So there's a
Yeah, I'm a little bit hung up on combining the data collection in there, because that really is a very, very different question and set of expertise than looking at evaluating based upon the data that's collected. You have to do one before you can do the other, but those are 2 really distinct.
The activities would be
Action.
or the who conducts those activities would be different.
Yes,
And that's from which numbers?
9 and 4.
Okay.
I think that there's something to being able to combine those somewhere. I just don't know if those do.
Okay. So what you can do, if those concepts, if you feel like they possibly could combine, you can think about them as, how do we combine them? We don't have to answer that question yet. But what you can say is, if we combine them, we need to make sure each of their concepts maintain their efficacy as they go forward. So thinking about combining 4, you have 2 different, 9 and 4, you have 2 different responsible parties.
Yeah.
And really, if
Jessica.
you wanted to get super picky about it, the others that we're talking about combining, you know, the research, the use of inspired collaborative R&D, what about that entire all of that is based upon us having sufficient quantitative and qualitative data to be able to accomplish those.
And it's for 5, 7, and 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need 9 to be able to do those as well, so you need 9 to be able to do 4. But they're.
The 5, 7, and 1, you would need 9 to be able to accomplish it. If you combine 9 and 4, you just have to think further about how to make sure both parts are achieved. That'd be a good way to summarize it.
Maybe it's good to wait on 4 at this point.
Okay.
And it's not agreed on.
So we're going to leave, right now, we're going to leave 4 by itself. And then do we want to leave 9 by itself, or can 9 go in with 5, 7, and 1?
I'll just say from the station here in person for 5 and 7, I did not come up.
Online, personally?
But people might also not hit that 9 yet.
Clarification. Are 5, 7, and 1 all have the same responsible party, and if not, does that have anything to do with 9?
If they don't, then
Like-
the anything to do with time.
Like, yeah, if you combine all those and they don't have the same responsible party, then you've got tasks that are combined, but with different responsible parties all lumped in there.
So you may have more than one responsible party. Is that okay?
So 5, 7, and 1 all have Commonwealth Research University Collaborative, and 9 has TBD for responsible party. But I don't, they might have been party list.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation. I think there was not consensus that that would be the approach for this.
So for now, just because we have about 10 minutes to talk about the other 5, we're going to leave 5, 7, and 1 together. We have 9 separate and 4 separate for now. What we're looking at, okay? So let's go on and let's see about number 2. Is there anyone who wanted to combine 2 or? So just be a yes or no question. The 2, do you either want to drop it or combine it with something else, or should we leave it as is?
For the virtual group, we had a suggestion of combining 2 with 8 and 10.
Okay, 2 with 8 and 10.
We had 2 and 10 combined, but 8 never came up with it.
Either one brought up by one person or 8.
But 10, define what success is, and then 2, develop the measures and methods to monitor those performance metrics for projects.
So 2 and 10. Does anyone have any comments? If we combine 2 and 10, is that okay with you? Then I'll ask you about 8, but 2 and 10 for now.
Yeah, I think people felt on this station, they felt better about number 10 in combination with number 2 rather than having number 10 by itself.
Okay. So no one's speaking loudly. So for now, we're going to keep 2 and 10 together. Next question is number 8. Look at 8. Does 8 fit with 2 and 10? 8 support research on next generation social vulnerability and understanding of climate justice, cultural and historic resources, including a Virginia flood-centric social vulnerability index data set to inform project prioritization.
Yeah, I'll just maybe summarize from the conversation that happened at the station about 8, which was that we have a lot of data already. There are a lot of indices in existence. Perhaps another data set is not needed. We also talked a lot about how the key is the last 3 words of this, informing project prioritization. And that really is done by others, then perhaps the research will be done by. In general, I think the conversation went in the direction of this is a lower priority recommendation. It could be linked to, I think that was your recommendation. To me, it reads as, you know, if we're looking at monitoring performance for social things, maybe this is one of the ways that we would do that.
Yeah, feels to me like if you achieved 2, you would have achieved 8. And you wouldn't need 8. Except for that, maybe bringing that to inform project prioritization. And defining success, but.
I mean, social economic justice indicators or social vulnerability indices.
Is one of the.
You could combine those probably.
It is kind of sensible too.
Kind of sounds like it.
Anyone concerned about that? Or like just for me, that here is there.
That's fine. Got it there.
Okay.
Yeah, I just. Yeah, echoing, adding another data set when there are other data sets that exist and we don't really know how much is a more specific data set than why is SOBI deficient or why is the CDC index insufficient? Is that substantially going to change decisions? And are we really going to get into a situation where the state is somehow making state level decisions about priorities based on social vulnerability? Or is the state going to support the localities and whatever they're going to do? In one, that SOBI is a prioritization or whatever it is, not SOBI, but SBI data set as a prioritization mechanism matters a whole lot. But the state potentially has a lot of localities angry at it about why are people in your town more vulnerable than people in my town? Or is this something where we're gonna put that investment in and say, we're gonna support you whatever at the local level? Decisions and resource allocation based on an FBI in an urban area, you may see a lot of variation. If you're going into King and Queen County, you're probably in those rural areas not gonna be able to get granular enough for that to really make a significant difference in where you're gonna say, I'm gonna do a project or not. So it's not gonna be one of the major criteria.
So having that or not is a question. So the SBI piece may cause more discussion or consternation or something. So if we combine 2, 10, and 8, you can still change the languaging around that, but are the concepts in there? You can decide to drop any part of those metrics in what you're talking about when you finish the language, but are all of those part of the same concept? The metric concept, yeah. And then the 2, 10, and 8, question is, can we put them together for now?
I say yes. What?
Yep. Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on to this, we just have a couple minutes left, and we have number 3 and number 6. Any thoughts about 3 and 6?
The online group sees 3 as a high priority and a standalone recommendation.
With that 100%, that was exactly my comment. What the other options that are not done?
So right now, we have the part combiner 9, well, with 4. Now, 6 could go into anything or standalone. Right now, we have 5 groupings. And then 6 becomes a 6th grouping. So if you leave 6 on its own, you're voting on your top 5 when they fall away. That's fine. Or you can choose to put 6 in with something else.
Over here at 6, we saw that it was kind of a higher level of a lot of the supporting the research needs. This is developing the statewide strategy to support essentially what the research needs, identify what those research needs are. And then the other subcommittee or recommendations were support research for this. This is a higher level of create a strategy in order to determine what research is supported.
Can you possibly combine that then to have the strategy and then include the other pieces that we've grouped together? Which grouping is that, Matt? Do you know? The 571?
Online, we discussed combining 6 and 4.
Okay. Let's look at that, 6 and 4. So 4 is about research and innovations and state and local. 6 is about the statewide strategy. 6 and 4. Can we possibly group that?
I may be more in the camp of 6 flowing into 1, 5, and 7. Just because, you know, if you're gonna think about, you know, co-production 101 is first you do a needs assessment. Who's ever done anything with NOAA, first you do a needs assessment. I mean, it's that level of kind of a basic workflow, and then the needs assessment drives the action agenda.
So can we have a quick consensus? Who would like 6 to go in with, you said 571? Yeah, okay, so would 6 fit better with 571 or would 6 fit better with 4?
Just, are you suggesting combining them or just?
I'm not sure.
Relating them?
I'm trying to work it out verbally in my own head right now.
You put 6.
I mean,
Because 6 is developing the strategy, that would need to, if you put it with the research, you're saying you have to proceed doing the research, develop your strategy, then do the research.
Yeah.
Number 4, while research is the first item, it's really the needs assessment, research obstacles that exist at the local scale and what innovations are required. Right, that's part of your strategy development. What's going on? What do we need to do about it?
yeah.
Those 2 things.
Needs a reword on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Serious reword. But
Yeah,
I think
if you have that reword, then yeah, I totally see where we're.
And then that strategy focuses on what the local needs are too, for that.
So basically,
Based on
the
language.
concept of 6 and 4, telling this is correct, you're developing the state strategy. And that strategy would include number 4.
To be informed by number.
Informed by number 4. So develop the state strategy to be informed by number 4 among other things.
Yep.
Got it. Therefore. Number 1 for me. Theme for it, we say is data. One. There's number 9 by itself. That's the multi-institutional effort and collating, we'll reword that, but that one's by itself. Then you have 4 and 6 together, and that's developing a state strategy to be informed by number 4 among others. Then we have the grouping of 2, 10, and 8. And that's about the metrics, more or less. And then we have number 3. Number 3 is identifying the critical data needs and developing a plan for funding for acquisition, processing, and analysis. Very good. So what we'll do. We'll be able to put these together and provide these to you. And then you'll have some time, you can think about them, how they could be combined into recommendations that are stated in a way that covers all of your concepts, as well as some other pieces to the recommendation. Let's say, what's the purpose of that recommendation? What are the pieces that bring it to life? And then in Q4, during that meeting, we want to make sure we get the language right on the recommendations. And we also want to try to do as much as we can on collecting that recommendation. But congratulations, because you come to grouping of 5. Great. We can talk more.
That's good.
Sure.
But well, maybe it's just a comment. It's interesting because I was in the morning session in the funding and we went through the same exercise. And there was a lot of discussion about what's actionable and it was hard to combine at times. I'm not sure fully satisfied when we came out. This one, it's interesting. I think we found that there's been a lot more discussion on words and what that means, and a different meaning takes you down a different path. And I think when you guys rework the words, support is a challenging word. Support research. You know, support can be funding, it can be staffing support. Research is a different function by somebody else. We've got even the co-production 1 and 6. I mean, to me, I was thinking a lot about even some citizen science and perhaps some other kind of approaches there. So that's more approach to research. Actually conducting collaborative research with partnerships. That's actually with the private sector. That's actually doing the research. So there's there's a lot more blending of meanings in the wording. So maybe as you rework the language, watch those in particular, because I think that that's yeah, but I'm kind of walking out of here feeling like I don't really know what we're recommending and what.
No, I feel you. I have some of the same thoughts in my head.
So here's an idea. After we do the public comment, we'll still have probably some time left. Let's see if we can come to a theme or a purpose for each of those recommendation sets. And we might not get to all of them, but you're together. Let's see what we can do towards that. A theme and a purpose for each one. And that may be a big help towards getting to your languaging.
Big pause for public comment.
Like that.
At this time, no one has expressed any interest to speak online.
We don't have any members of the public in the room. Before we come back to the discussion, then real quick. Upcoming schedule, make sure you're all there. The next full TAC meeting, September 18th, should be on your calendars, Eastland Earth and Patrick Henry Building, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Our next subcommittee meeting is October 10th, 1 to 3 p.m. It's another back-to-back funding and research data innovation afternoon, finalizing voting on recommendations. The last scheduled full TAC meeting, November 13th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. after Henry Building. The plan comes out later than December 31st. And there is an opportunity for any other new business subcommittee discussion not related to the recommendation. Any other items to discuss? If not, I'll hand it back over to Linda for discussion.
And if you're in the room, you're welcome to grab a snack as we finish our discussion today. So we have about 20 minutes. And if you're thinking just about, let's just focus on purpose is the why, right? Does everyone agree that purpose basically answers the why?
Yeah.
Okay. The purpose or the why. Let's take whatever you think might be the easiest one. This is a grouping of 10 to 8 or 2, 8 and 10, however you want to do it. What anyone who is a subcommittee member, either online or in person, give us some concept of what's the purpose in your mind? What would you like the purpose to be? And Rebecca will type it.
If I make it, what problem does this solve?
All together are telling us what our target is, what our goal is, right? We're defining what the success looks like, and then whether we're accomplishing our goals.
What is our goal and define how we would accomplish it?
Well, I think it's almost more, are we accomplishing it? So are we, you're developing measures and methods, but those are methods to monitor progress towards accomplishing the goal of resilience.
Get a nod, 2 nods. Any other thoughts? Good start with that. And do you have anyone for the theme of this? There's a theme to it. Like metrics could be a theme.
It almost feels like number 10 itself is what the thing knows. But, how do we know what success looks like? I think the one thing that I do want to be careful about in the way that this gets recombined and reworded is that there can be a tendency to say, all right, we did this and it didn't work, and that was, something punitive. I think we need to be sure that we're creating space for and acknowledging that we're going to try things that don't work. And failure needs to be part of that process. So we also need to know when something doesn't work, what should we do to correct that? How do we adjust based on that?
You're able to make a change and adjust. Yeah. When you're looking at the metrics that you're going down a path. Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe the theme then is adaptive management, essentially, because that's essentially the definition of adaptive management.
Should tool for continuous improvement.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one, okay? You got far? Next one is 1, 5, and 7 together. What might that purpose be or that theme be? Anyone can call it out.
So for this one, I would say that it is getting the theme. I don't know about the theme. Sorry, I was going for the purpose. But the purpose is to have the information necessary to support robust decision making.
The information necessary to support robust decision making. We have nods.
Or maybe just discussion. Because funny, I was taken by kind of our conversation over here around 1 a little bit. And you're interested in, made a lot of sense to me though. What a lot of these things, this research work is trying to do, right? We're driving towards what's an effective flood reduction action, method, tool, intervention. that feels a little different than robust data for decision-making per se. It almost feels like it's about what's effective.
Okay. So defining,
Your toolkit's effective methods,
so would you say you're defining effective methods?
finding, identifying, extending your toolkit.
Okay, expanding the toolkit of effective methods. You have that in the section. Anyone ever thought about this theme?
When fiber connected by nature-based solution. And I guess 7 is then support research to evaluate the benefit. The resiliency action is incorporate that nature-based solution. Cool. Maybe, can we think on this?
Anyone else have a thought? And it takes a while. This is not something we can do in an instant. We're trying to do it in an instant. But just recognize something may come to you right now or may not, and some of this needs more noodling.
Well, when you were writing your collaborative up there, in the 5, 7+1, you said research was how you defined this group. I don't know, if research is a theme, but.
Is research a thing?
Yeah, it's almost like the research needed to define decision criteria.
Okay. I think research needed to define decision criteria. Do you feel like this takes you a little bit further down the road of figuring out what these three together are? Okay. We're okay to move to the next group. 6 and 4 together. That one, we had said, is developing the state strategy to be informed by the research and other things. So what is the purpose of this? Why do we want to do a state strategy that's informed by research and other things? How does it help? If you're doing the state strategy, what does that give you? Achieves collaboration, maybe?
Or was the research on the obstacles that exist? We're trying to, what are the impediments to resilience at the local scale, and then create a state strategy to support any needs that come out of that.
Almost identifying what's most relevant.
Okay, so the purpose would be to identify what's most relevant so that appropriate actions can be taken.
Whitney has a good point. That's awfully close to 3 if the phrase it that way. Well.
I think you'll write the same thing for 3.
It's different, yeah, 3 in different contexts.
Yeah, includes the second component of development plan for regular funding for acquisition process.
But that's really specific to data. Number 3 is very data centric.
So maybe the theme in 3 is data centric,
Data centric solution.
data centric solution.
That's basically what it is.
Okay. And that's real important, we just identify that, because it looks like it's two things that could be similar. But let's identify the themes so that they're not so similar. So what's the purpose of 3?
Well, I mean, I see it as maintaining current and authoritative accurate data for decision making that up to date, you know, keeping the data up to date so that you're not making decisions on old and bad data, but I look at it that way, but I think that's not.
Rebecca, keeping data, maintaining current data for the best decisions possible.
Yeah, that's available data.
Maintaining best available data to inform decisions.
I remember I had to put this one in there because of the challenge that y'all had with the land cover data and how it's how others.
That was.
Yeah.
You want to go back and look at 6, 4, and 6 again?
So does that
Yeah,
differentiate
so
enough
that
to
helps, yeah.
That helps.
Well, can you look back up at?
Look at 4 and 6. Okay, so maybe we can grab it.
What about the word what?
Well, it's not just data, it's information.
So identify information was relevant in the game to make it different from data. The word what is very non-descriptive.
Right.
Well, it's data, it's information, and what problems do we need to solve?
Okay, you want to write that out? Make the what into data, information.
I think that's 4, and I think that's, sorry, I think that's 4, and I think that's 6.
4 and 6 are together. So we're talking about just 4 right now, you think?
Unless I misunderstand what 6 is.
What do you understand it to be?
It seemed to be focused on like this co-production of information more than figuring out what problems we want to solve.
Yeah.
It's functionally needs assessment.
So the statewide strategy is.
I think
based on
that's
needs
it.
assessment.
So is that the theme, Jeff?
The theme could be needs assessment then, great.
Is, I'm hearing Whitney say centered on co-production, Jess, you're saying needs assessment. Are those, is a needs assessment always a form of co-production or vice versa, or do we need to do, maybe we do something with that word co-production?
I think we need to do something with the word co-production because you can do a needs assessment that is not co-production. And that you will have a very useful needs assessment. If it's useful, it's by accident.
So needs assessment in a multi-institutional environment, multi-something environment. Using some of the words that were there before.
Full word, mother.
It's not blurring this all into one together. It's all the same.
Yes. Do a good job.
Data is the right word there to use the issue.
Because of number 3. So for the purpose, what are you really identifying to help you take the most relevant actions? What do you need to identify there? You're identifying obstacles, innovations.
I mean, is it about interventions? Is it just opposite,
Word if you use it in academics.
I always did.
Not everybody takes that,
Right.
that context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, this is a state product that needs to not have.
we do have a lot of academics. Don't.
So, what do you mean by intervention then? How would you say that? Sorry, for the general audience. What do you mean by intervention?
That's you.
I mean, what projects to do, right?
Things to do.
Yeah, I mean, what jumps out to me about 6 is the second half, like to engage and incorporate community stakeholder input into these things, including project implementation.
Yeah, I mean, if I understood Matt on this one, it was, you have to understand the obstacles and what the incentives might look like, or what might be useful in solving the problem. But 6 is really about like, so what? To what end? How are you figuring out what to do?
So,
Priorities?
Well, I mean, I think the only place, maybe I'm wrong, the only place priorities gets mentioned is number 9.
Oh, okay, sorry. You're right.
But I mean, I'm just reporting news. I don't know.
do you want it someplace else? You can put it someplace else.
I just don't like data there. That was my
Yeah.
only comment.
Let's
It
change
may
data.
not even necessarily, it's not always data, it's not always a priority, sometimes it's the, I don't have this piece of information. I don't know what I don't know.
That's the needs part. That's where we have what, I suppose.
Just, how about just identify appropriate action?
The purpose is to be able to identify appropriate actions, and the theme is a needs assessment. You have to figure out what to do in order to identify those appropriate actions. There you go.
I'm simplifying, but.
Do you have a complete concept now? Seems like. Let's look at number 9 for a moment before we go. We've got 5 minutes. Theme and purpose. For number 9.
I think this is where we were talking about priorities, perhaps.
What's the theme?
Well, this is the one that gets modified by what Troy was saying. So support is a very powerful word here. Who's doing the supporting? Is it the state supporting universities? Then the question is multi-institutional, is it universities we're talking about when we say multi-institutional?
Maybe state aid. That's where we took it in our group, and really was, thinking
Being
about that.
supporter or being the multi-institution?
The multi-institution, maybe it's different. Is that, am I thinking that wrong? Okay.
I think those of us who are academic have a tendency to think of ourselves as the institutions, and we're nowhere near the only institution in this. I mean, you can think about, right now, who's the entity engaged to do the modeling for these plans? It's a private sector company. It's a private sector climate services company. So that's an institution too, that's in the state.
Is it more, are you more trying to say cross-organizational? Like,
Yeah.
are we just trying to say everyone? Let's have a collaborative effort to collate. Is it support a collaborative effort? And that way you don't have to worry about exactly who's part of that.
Yeah, I think, that's fair. The point that we don't want to miss though is like which agency is in charge of which decision making and which planning. And so, the state agency piece to that is part of this. And if we lose that, then that's not anywhere in our research.
Yeah,
discussion.
it's collaboration and it's coordination. It's making sure that agencies are using or accessing the same data that exists. That there's not, you're minimizing duplication of effort where it's not necessary. That kind of
That's the purpose, maybe. You're minimizing duplication of effort.
just want to acknowledge that Troy's, you made a good comment of it's on, not for. And that kind of takes the meaning of the statement almost in a different direction, or what about adaptive management, please? Could we talk about that for a second? Like, are we saying actually we want this information for modeling risk assessment, or do we want the information about what's been done on this to reflect on what's been done? Or maybe both.
So somehow this committee thought of that recommendation in the initial brainstorm. This belongs to you, what do you want? And what are our two questions? Is it about making sure everybody has access to the data so that we're not duplicating efforts? Is it about taking the results of the data and being able to move forward with it? So everyone can know.
Or the data democratization. That's kind of how I read it.
What is data democratization?
Academic.
Super guilty.
Data democratization would mean that smaller institutions without large capacity for collecting, collating, processing, analyzing data would have the same access to tier one institution level computing resources and information quality and that kind of stuff to ask really good questions, just like anybody else should be able to. And it could be any institution, it could be an academic institution, but it could be the PDCs, or it could be local government, it could be, people with a stake in the outcome of a decision.
So then on the theme is the collaboration and coordination on data access and on results. Like how could you combine those two concepts?
Does that chair have any?
Can we also do have a separate adaptive management?
Up with this.
So maybe that part of it is only adaptive management and this.
Which one is that? Because I feel like 9 was adaptive management.
And 2 now.
10 to
Okay.
8 has adaptive management.
As long as that.
So, but what you've done, considering it's time, I think we had time, so. Well, the game is over.
It's not just minimizing the duplication of effort, it's effectively mobilizing our collective capacity to get more things done.
I like that.
Effectively mobilizing our collective capacity to get more things done. Great. So you did it in 20 minutes. You did come up with themes and purposes. So we're going to start with that piece. The information, we'll get that out to you and then see what more can develop and we get back together in Q4. Thank you.
Great.
Congratulations.
Adjourn the meeting.
All right, meeting adjourned.